Hello, I'm Chris, and today I'm talking about one of the first topics I ever showed on my YouTube channel, my AP8 printer. We're going to discuss what I've learned from it and where it's going next, here on Kersey Fabrications. Going back to the first video I ever published on this channel, I was talking about my AP8 printer here and using carbon fiber rails for this printer. So a little history behind this: an AP8 printer is based upon an AM8 printer, which is based upon an ANET A8 printer like I have here behind me. So exactly what does that mean? The ANET A8 printer was one of the first low-cost printers to come to the North American market that you could get for sub $200. So with this printer, you'd get a kit, you'd assemble it, and it printed, it did a good job. It had some safety concerns that I'm sure you can find elsewhere on YouTube, but if you read through the forums and if you were conscientious about it, you were able to correct it with some MOSFETs and some new wiring. From there, people took the electronics in the ANET A8 and made what was called an AM8, AM standing for all metal. They took the electronics, they added aluminum extrusions to it to make it all metal. Basically this design we see here. From there, Chip Grisham took the design, modeled out the extrusions, making it 3D printable, much like you see here. So in this printer, all of the extrusions, everything that can be made of plastic is made of plastic. So all of my cases, extrusions, joints, everything is made of plastic. It's all PLA. So the only pieces you find on this printer that are not plastic are the things that have to be metal, such as your rails or your motors, electronics, things like that. So I went with the AP8 because I thought it was a great platform for experimentation. You know, you can print out different pieces, you can try different components. If you don't like the way something's designed, you just reprint it. It also allowed me to play a little bit with different heights, different widths and depths on this printer. So from here, I'm going to actually be building a large format printer, not really based upon this design anymore. It's still an i3 design because it still has the central uprights, but it's going to be very different in terms of the components I use for a lot of the motion. So one thing I wanted to do before I disassembled this printer and repurposed some of its parts was to discuss some of the things I learned from this experience. First of all, let's start where my videos began, which is these carbon fiber rods. I think I discussed most of what I wanted to cover in the original video, so if you haven't seen that yet, again, you can watch it here. But basically what I've decided is carbon fiber rails are really good if weight is a concern. So if you're interested in using carbon fiber rods where they work best, such as in a Core XY design, I urge you to click here to watch Tech2C's video. He discusses both carbon fiber rods, aluminum rods, as well as a bunch of different types of bushings and bearings that you can use in those systems. Tech2C did a very thorough job. I'm going to forward you to him rather than reiterating what he's already covered. So my summary of carbon fiber is, again, use them where weight is a real concern. Otherwise, I don't think that they're going to buy you much on a standard i3 design. As I mentioned, I think as long as they're in the upright position, they're going to do just fine. There's not a lot of motion moving these in any particular direction. Where if you put them in the horizontal direction, though, there's going to be some forces pulling down on them. Gravity itself is a real problem. And if you'll notice on this printer, I was able to leave the carbon fiber rods on the x-axis because of how light this component is, but I opted to completely pull them off on the y-axis, which holds the print bed. I found that due to the weight of the bed and the weight of the other metal components here, it really pulled down too much and it was unreliable in terms of how smooth that motion would be. And if you're doing it for a cost savings, there isn't any. I just did a search on Amazon and found that both carbon fiber and steel rods are running about the same price for a pair. So that's a wash. So moving on to the next component I'd like to talk about, let's talk about bed leveling. This X carriage is based upon some designs that I found on Thingiverse, but is completely modeled from scratch based upon what I thought would be a good design. There's a lot of components that went into this, a lot of thought that went into this based upon how I saw prints turning out. You'll notice it does have dual cooling because what I found, if you're cooling from one direction, then if you ever print overhangs in the other direction, you'll find that they droop a little bit. They don't look as good as the direction you have cooling from. The other thing about this, in this design, I have an auto bed leveler. Not really for the print bed of this size, but because of the size I was trying to go to. The size I plan on going to is 600 by 400 on my bed size. But I wanted some experimentation. So I got one of these BL Touch, designed this one where I put the BL Touch on the back of the carriage. Why did I do that? Well, it made it where I didn't have to redesign this carriage, and it was a convenient place to put it because it wasn't crowded back there. One thing I learned from doing this though, is that the BL Touch works a lot better the closer to your print head you can get it. So with that in mind, here is the next model that will be going on my new printer. So with my new design, I put the bed leveler immediately next to the print head. As you can see here on this design, this is the BL Touch. It's directly next to the print head, which is a lot closer than it was on this printer. How it'll function, we won't know until we actually get it on the printer. One final note on bed levelers is one thing I've learned about this printer. So this printer is a 220 by 220 print bed. One thing I found is that for a print bed this size, I don't think a bed leveler makes much sense. I find that simply leveling your bed correctly is a much better way of getting good prints. Because if you think about it, a bed leveler is simply compensating for an unlevel bed and will change your print slightly, whereas if you actually level your bed, you'll get a flat surface like you were expecting. The final thing I wanted to mention on this printer was the stepper drivers that I chose to use. So I finally decided to take the plunge and try the 2130 stepper drivers, which run almost silent on 3D printers. So with that comes a lot of wiring and a lot of work to get them running correctly. I found that the tuning of these drivers really takes the most time. So when I first set these up, I had 5 of these stepper drivers attached to each of my stepper motors, my X, my Y, my Z, and my extruder. What I learned from this though was that it's really not needed on any of your motors that are not running at high rates of speed. So you don't need it on your extruder, you don't need it on your Z axis, which only leaves 2 of them needed for X and your Y. And then I simply use the A4988 drivers on the other ones like I've always used. I find those drivers are still best when you need either a small amount of motion or you need motion with a lot of torque. I found that the 2130 drivers are not particularly strong drivers, and the stronger you want them, the less silent they are, which kind of defeats the purpose. So with that, I think my time with this printer has about come to an end, and it's time to start on my new one, which is the large format printer I've dubbed the Cosplay 600. Why Cosplay 600? Well, because the original design behind this printer was so that I could print entire chest pieces of armor in one go. So that's where the name came from, 600 being the width of the printer. So soon on my channel, you'll find the construction videos for the Cosplay 600 as I build it. I'm gonna take you through the process, take you through my design. I'm actually gonna post a picture of that design here so that you can see what it's going to look like. If you have any comments before I begin, please comment below. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. See you next time on Cozy Fabrications. Bye.